to draw quadratic curves for me. So I asked you to draw the quadratic curves here, right, on page 165, 2, 3 and 4. Anybody have any problems with them? Does anyone want me to draw one out? Okay, I'll take that as a no response means we're all fine. Where did that person go? Why aren't they coming in? Oh, sorry, I have to do all this again now. They must be in. Stay there. Oh yeah, we're here now. Yeah, sorry. Right, you can all see the camera now, yeah? Yeah. Right, okay, so everyone was okay with drawing the quadratic curves, were you? You were either able to do them out manually, or you can do them on the calculator, or you can do them both ways. Right, but yeah, okay? Right, okay, right, so we learned how to draw lines, then we learned how to answer questions on lines. The last day we drew curves, now we're answering the questions on the curves. Now, the questions, girls, I know are really hard, right, and some people can't make a head nor tail of them, but just remember that most of the marks go for actually drawing the graph, okay? So there's no need to panic about the questions, okay? Some of the questions are the same all the time, so you nearly be able to learn them once off, and the rest of them, don't worry about it. As I say, most of the marks go for drawing of the graph, so that's the most important thing, okay? So the questions, right, okay, for questions on quadratic graphs, and if I move this over, it'd be better. Yeah. Questions on, so this for your notes, questions on quadratic graphs. Remember, a quadratic graph is a U or an N-shaped. Smiley face or a sad face? Okay, so the first type of question, I'll tell you, I might leave you just write them down, and then I'll draw out, while you're writing them down, I'll be drawing out a graph, and we'll be able to answer some questions on the graph, okay? So, sorry. So if you just write that down, and I'll be drawing out a graph. Right, okay, we're ready. Right, okay, so can I do this? Right, okay, right. So the first question, and it's a question they always ask you, is number 1. right, they'll ask you for the roots of f of x. So remember, this is f of x you've just drawn. So they might ask you for the roots of f of x, or they might ask you where, right, f of x equals 0. They're the exact same question, okay? And if you learn that, right, if you learn that the roots of f of x and find the points where where f of x equals 0 are the exact same question, and it's the simplest thing in the world. It's where the graph crosses the x-axis. So it's just where the 2 points where the graph crosses the x-axis. So the 2 points where this graph that I've drawn here crosses the x-axis are at -1 and 3. So the roots of f of x are -1 and 3. Right? The points where f of x equals 0 are -1 and 3. Right? The points where the graph crosses the x-axis are -1 and 3. Right? Sometimes, girls, right, okay, they might be a whole number. So if you just imagine, right, if I drew a little curve in there, right, this will be one answer and this will be the other answer. These are not whole numbers. So you guess, right, as in you approximate, okay? So to me that's not exactly 1.5, so I'd say 1.4, right? And someone else might say it's 1.3, and someone else might say it is 1.5. Okay, it's whatever you think it is, whatever the graph is, but they're all in or around the same answer. Right here, this would be about -0.2, I'd say. Okay, right, but again, you might get -0.3, and that's perfectly fine. There's always an interval where they'll allow any answer between here and here. Okay, so that's the first question, the roots of the graph. Right, are we good with that? I take that as a yes. Okay, yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay, can I rub this bit out? So, or can I rub that out? Okay, so the roots are where it crosses the x-axis. So here, and I'll rub out this little mini one here. So number 1, the roots are -1 and 3. Okay, right. So the second one is, right, they give you the x value and tell you find the x value, the y value. So they'll tell you what x is and ask you to say what's the matching y, or number 3, they'll say here's y, find x, right? Okay, so I find my ruler, I had it there it is. Right, okay, so for example, they might say f of 2, find f of 2. Now, when it's in the bracket, it's the x, right? So basically, they're telling me x is 2. So if they're telling me what x is, they want to know what y is, okay? So if they're telling me what x is, they want to know what y is. So you go to the x-axis, you go to 2 on the x-axis, so you go to 2 on the x-axis, so here's the x-axis, here's number 2. You go up or down to hit the graph. So in this case, there's no graph up there, so it's down. So you go down to hit the graph. So you hit the graph, right, okay, mine is badly drawn now, but it should hit it there. Draw a line across and read off this number. So when x is 2, y is -3. Is that okay? The same as we did for a line. We had that exact question in a line, right? Okay, I might just do a second one. Find f of -2. Okay, so the -2 is in the bracket, so that means it's x, so that means x is equal to -2. So that means go to the x-axis, go to -2 on the x-axis, draw a line up or down to hit the graph, and then read off the corresponding y. So in this case, it was down over here. In this case, I have to go up to hit the graph, because if I go down, I'll never hit a graph. So I go up, hit the graph, draw a line across, and read off that number. Right? So you read off that number, and that number is 5, and you read it off the y-axis. So if they tell you x, you find them y. Okay? And again, girls, sometimes these might end up not being a whole number, so you just approximate. So, you know, if they ask me for f of -2.5, I'd be going up here, right? And I'd be going across then where I hit the graph. So there's my answer, and that would be about 2.3, right? But as I say, you estimate what your graph says, okay? Is that right? Okay. So that was number 2, where they say, well, here's the x value, find me the y value. So question number 3 is, here's the y value, find me the x value. So here's the y value, find me the x value. So they might go, find the point where f of x is equal to 3. Okay? Find a point where f of x is equal to 3. So when the number is not in the bracket, it's y, because all of f of x can be replaced with y. So they're telling me y is 3. So if they tell me y is 3, they want to know what x is. So I go to the y-axis, I go to number 3 on the y-axis. Now, I can go left or right, but it's both ways, so that means I get 2 answers, so I have to go both ways. So I have to go left and right, okay? So if it hits it in both directions, you go both directions and you get 2 answers, okay? So you draw a line down here and read off your answer, and you draw a line down here and you read off your answer. Okay, so this is an example of where, girls, it's not an exact value, right? So it's somewhere between 3 and 4, right? It's past halfway, it's a good bit past halfway, so I'm kind of going to go 3.7. But as I say, if you say 3.8, that's great too. And over at this side, right, x is equal to, I've all the points rubbed off with my hands, sorry. So it's somewhere between -1 and -2, and I'd say that's near enough to halfway, so I'll say x is equal to -1.5, okay? But again, it's what your graph says. So this is an example where they tell me x and ask me for y, okay? So question number 1 are the roots, right? The second type of question they'll ask is, here's x, find me y. The third type of question they'll ask you is, here's y, find me x. So pretty similar to the line, except right, and the next one, right, okay, I didn't get you to write down the next slide, so I didn't. So the next slide, girls, is the minimum or the maximum point, right? Minimum or the maximum. They don't happen. You'll never have 2 of them. It'll be one or the other. And they might ask you for the minimum or maximum value or the point, right? And I'll talk about the 2 of them in a minute. So if you have a smiley face, it's going to be, that's going to be the minimum, the lowest point, right? So if it's a smiley face, they'll ask you to find the minimum point, right? And if it's a sad face, they'll ask you to find the maximum point, okay?
Miss, what does it say there? Next to point, / point.
Value, sorry, value.
Okay, thanks.
Right? So, and if it says value, you give the y coordinate, okay? We'll see in the example now what I mean by that, right? If it says value, you give the y coordinate, and if it says point, you give the point, obviously. Is it a big deal if you just always gave the point? No, not at all, but just this is what they mean, okay? So I'll leave you get that down, and then we'll go back to my graph, and I'll talk about the...
Miss?
Yes?
Do you know in the last question you just did, how did you know to draw the graph? Like what point, where did you get the points to draw the graph?
Which... I just copied them out of the book. You'll be given, it'll be like question 2, 3 or 4 last night. They'll either give you a graph and ask you questions on it, or they'll ask you to draw the graph first like they did last night. Okay? Yeah. So yeah, you wouldn't just magic up a graph. They'd either give you one and ask you questions on it, or they'd say draw this graph and then ask you questions on it. Okay? So
Yeah, nice.
yeah.
Do you know for the first one where find where f of x equals 0, is that just finding the points on the x?
X-axis, where it cuts the x-axis, that's all. So it's a really complicated way of saying where does it cross the x-axis.
Okay, thank you.
Right, is this down? Can I go back to my graph? Right, okay, sorry. Are we good? Yeah, right, okay. So if I go back to this graph, girls, this graph is U-shaped, so they're going to ask you here, right, they'll ask you for the minimum. So the minimum, girls, they'd never ask you for the maximum here because there is no maximum. So the minimum point it's across 1, if it wasn't rubbed out, it would be across 1 down to -4. So that would be the minimum point, right? Okay, if they just said the minimum value, you just say what the y is. So you don't bother with the 1, you just say the minimum value is -4, as in what's the lowest point it goes down to. Okay? And just be careful, girls, right? If sometimes when you draw the graph, you end up with 2 points at the bottom, and you kind of have to sweep down a bit and up, right? When you draw, they give you 2 level points, and in order to make it a smiley face, you don't come down and go across and up, right? You kind of curve it down. Is that okay? Right? So when that's the case, this is your minimum point. Okay, so it depends on how low down you went, but you don't give these points, you give this one, so it'll probably be a decimal again, but we'll see an example like that, so don't worry about it. Okay, right, that's all the questions I'm going to go through today because I don't want to overload you. So we've done 4. So the first one is, right, where does it cut the x-axis? Right, the second one was, here's x, tell me y. The third one was, here's y, tell me x. And the fourth one was maximum or minimum, depending on whether it's a smiley face or a sad face. Okay? Right? And I'm just going to give you 2 questions on that. Wait not, or maybe I'll give you 3, will I? Wait not, let's see. The roots, the values, the maximum. Right, I'm going to give you 3. So we're going to do page 169 to 170, and you're going to do 1, 2 and 3, but you can leave out three part 6, the last bit of 3 part 6. It asks me about the axis of symmetry, we haven't that done yet, so leave out 3 part 6. So page 169 to 170, 1, 2 and 3, and leave out question 3 part 6. Okay? I'm going to stop recording now because I recorded that. I'm going to stick up the recording as well because I'm missing a few people, and as you told me it's handy anyway to have